So hello and welcome to the latest webinar in the Elemental Talks programme. Our topic today, skills for net zero. The electricity industry discussed the growing demand for skilled jobs to deliver net zero throughout the electrical industry. This is the seventh and final session in our Zero Carbon Home series, broadcast throughout this month in partnership with BEAMA, UK Trade Association for manufacturers and providers of energy infrastructure technologies and systems. Your chair for the next 60 minutes, my name is Jim McClelland, founder and editor of SustMeme, home to both the magazine and the top 500 rankings. Joining me on the panel this morning are Rick Hartwig, Built Environment Lead at the Institution of Engineering and Technology, IET, John Netherwood, UK General Manager, Lucy Electric, and Gisela Farmer, Director of Policy and Marketing at BEAMA. It is all live, as you can probably tell, with Q&A to finish. So please pop your questions in the Ask a Question box. You'll probably find at the bottom of your screen the clues in the name. You pose them, I'll ask them, they'll answer them. So a little bit about Elemental. This webinar forms part of a program of talks hosted and produced by Elemental, elementalexpo.com. It's the online community for professionals focused on innovation in heat, water, air and energy, the vital elements within the built environment now and in the future. You can find the full diary of events both on the website as well as on the Elemental Crowdcast page, which you might have used to log in. A range of upcoming webinars. You can also view the whole back catalogue, whole host of hot topics, including all of the preceding 6 webinars in this Zero Carbon Home series with BEAMA, supported by Glen Dimplex, Drayton Controls, Valent UK, Lucy Electric, Schneider Electric, and AD. It's all available on demand. Who's who are great speakers, and I should add, everything is obviously free to access. So lots of infotainment to enjoy. So we have a big topic to discuss today. So a very brief intro from me. Skills for net zero. Today, our panel will explore the growing demand for skilled jobs right across the electrical industry in the delivery of net zero. We all know last November, the UK's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution announced its aim to mobilise 12 billion of government investment, plus potentially 3 times that amount from the private sector, to create and support up to 250,000 green jobs as part of the government's grand ambition to support the creation of 2 million skilled jobs by 2030, to build back greener, reach net zero emissions by 2050. So this is the final webinar in the series, Super 7 on Zero Carbon Homes, the Elemental series of talks run in conjunction with BEAMA as part of their Net Zero by Design campaign. Each event has been supported by a BEAMA white paper. Today it is Skills for Net Zero. The electrical industry discussed the growing demand for skilled jobs to deliver net zero. The eponymous title, and you should find the link in the chat box so you'll be able to read it in full after the event. So looking at the forecast growth in green jobs and what that means for skills and training, our panel are going to debate what the scale of this challenge will be, how this fits into the context of delivering the UK net zero goals, what are the existing skills gaps and what perhaps are the future, plus what are the pathways to attract and onboard people into our industry. In truth, some of the numbers involved are pretty daunting. The reality is we face a big delivery challenge if we're going to become part of the solution to the climate emergency. So enough from me, let the talks begin. So as we start to explore the challenges and opportunities around skills for net zero, I'd like to invite our panel to introduce themselves, share some opening insights around the white paper, core issues, future demand, delivery targets, all of the above. So to kick us off then, Gisela, as the BEAMA white paper says, global markets for low carbon technology will be worth billions in decades to come. Not just heating, for example, but electricity networks too. So what are the key takeaways from your report, please?
Okay, so our white paper is very much a kind of initial response to the UK government's Green Jobs Task Force report, and sets out the scale of the challenge for our particular supply chain and the existing skills gaps that are already there, and what the requirements will be in the future. And if I maybe can take kind of 5 minutes to just kind of summarize our position within that paper. And also, I think worth mentioning that today, this is our final webinar in the series, and there's a very good reason why we scheduled this as the last webinar. And that's because whenever we talk to our industry about net zero delivery, it always comes down to skills and the huge ramp up in employment needed across the industry getting this right will be absolutely critical to the delivery of the target, as you said, and it's a really important topic for us at the moment within BEAMA. The UK government published their net zero strategy recently, and the heat and building strategy, and the government have set targets for 2 million green jobs by 2030 as part of the new green industrial revolution in the UK. BEAMA members represent a very key industry who will deliver many of these green jobs and facilitate that just transition to net zero. We know the International Energy Agency have estimated 14 million jobs will be created from the clean energy sector alone by 2030. So our conversation, and as it's set out in the white paper, is about retraining and transitioning people from high carbon industries to low carbon sectors. And it's also about job retention and the continuation of that training to ensure people have lifetime careers in the essential sectors we need to deliver net zero. When we look at the scale of the delivery challenge in our industry alone, and we've set that out in our series of white papers, and I think that's really fundamentally what they're all about. A few examples: we need 60,000 workers in the heat pump installation industry as a whole for domestic and non-domestic by 2028. So that's a few years' time. We need to provide energy efficiency retrofit of 1 million homes a year by 2050, potentially installing 30 to 40 million charge points by 2050. And looking at the storage sector, we currently have 1 gigawatt of battery storage installed in the UK. We already have 8 gigawatts planned. So these are big numbers, big scale up, really vital industries for meeting net zero. We'll be publishing work later in November with the Energy Systems Catapult to set out more detail around these numbers, and specifically actually looking at electricity network skills and volumes, and end use technology investment to 2050. But the numbers are big. It's potentially a great opportunity for growth in jobs in the UK. But it's a challenge to see where these people are going to come from when we're talking about companies scaling up 20, 50%, maybe more. And that's with a backdrop of, as I said, these existing skills gaps in the industry. And we know our members are already finding it hard to find people for certain jobs, and Brexit has had a short to medium term impact on that. My big focus in BEAMA, and the white paper really draws this out, is about working with our members and other industry bodies, because we can't do this in isolation. We have to collaborate across different industrial sectors in figuring out what the map of skills requirements looks like at a very detailed level across our industry. And that's really our next big task.
Excellent. Thank you, Zoe. Very good summary. And keywords already in play, like retraining, transitioning, and retention. As you say, they are scary numbers. I know the figure bandied about for heat pumps, for example, 600,000. I know Peter White, who took part in one of the earlier sessions, suggested it's 2 days work per pump, and therefore you're looking at 1.2 million days labor a year to deliver that kind of volume, which right now, of course, is fanciful, but that's the direction of travel. So we have to be realistic about how we get there. So now, John, if I'm coming to you from a company perspective, what are the big issues that you're tackling around future demands on skills and training, effectively the workforce of tomorrow from your perspective?
Thanks very much, Jim. So I'm John Netherwood. I'm the General Manager of Lucy Electric in the UK. Part of Lucy Group, which has Lucy Real Estate, Construction, Lucy Zodian, who do a lot of street lighting and specialist work on the highways, Lawson Fuses. Then we have Lucy Electric, and as I say, I'm part of that. My background is I'm an electrical mechanical engineer, starting with an apprenticeship through the UK defence industry, then oil and gas, and now within the utilities market within the UK, but working with a global company. So the challenges we're seeing at the minute, there's a lot of growth going on, a lot of opportunity for green energy. Certainly our partners, our customers, our clients, we're working with them, and all the technological advances that is now needed so that we use smarter equipment, we use better equipment and equipment that's safe for people to use. But within a skills shortage element of this, we're short of engineers, we're short of people within the IT world, we're short of like the data scientists and people who can actually analyze data. So it's not just about catching the data and looking at what you've review and see what's happening. They've got to look at the markets and move going forwards. So there's vacancies for those type of positions, but also within like Lucy real estate, we're short of things like carpenters. And although we bring on apprentice carpenters as much as we can, there's no one there to mentor them if you lose them and going through. Again, like most of the people on the call, there's other skills that we're short of. Simple things like forklift truck operators. And, people with the qualifications to do that as well. So as a manufacturing company, and we manufacture the electrical switchgear, we need to be able to unload our supplies coming in, put the stuff, the supplies going back out to customers and be delivered. So it's across the whole spectrum that we're seeing within the industry. So what we're trying to do within Lucy Electric is we have like STEM ambassadors for the science, technical, engineering and mathematics. So working with a lot of schools now, we're trying to get people involved in green energy and the industry coming out, which has a huge amount of press, obviously with the COP meeting and that going on this week. A lot of industry going through, and it's about getting people interested in our industry from a very, very early age and then developing them through that. We've got to make full use of the apprenticeship levy, and we hadn't been doing that for a couple of years. It was we'd bring apprentices in, and then we'd give them permanent roles before the apprenticeship finished, and they developed through that way, or we lost them to other companies. But it's important that everyone uses the apprenticeship levy. We have local awards, like the High Sheriff Awards here in Oxfordshire, which we bring through, and we look at school children who are doing a lot of work in the engineering piece, and we look and give them awards and keep them together. We're also sponsoring people through university with the hope that we get a pullback on this. A lot of the upskilling for the people you've currently got, because we found a couple of years ago, people would move jobs for more money, shorter commute, and they weren't so much willing to do a lot of the travelling. This includes guys going out to fit the heat pumps. This includes our field service engineers who move out and about. But now what we're finding is people are looking for jobs and working with companies that they believe in the brand name, that they will be developed in, the old investment in people, where they can see a career path for them, and they know that they're going to be a lot of work as new technologies are coming in and they are becoming advanced, retaining your workforce. And it's not just about, reward and recognition. This is about taking the time to advance their careers and bring us all forwards. The technical knowledge within the oil and gas industry as well that I come from, within our industry right now, there is that age difference where you've got people from like 50, 55 upwards and others from 20 to 30. And there is that sort of gap going through. Now, when people leave the business, they take a lot of knowledge with them, and you've got to capture that now. So you need to make sure people with knowledge are sharing that knowledge to others, coming through the system, to write it down, to make sure your technical documentation is as accurate as it can be. But again, it all takes time and effort from people who are already busy. But you need them. There's an old saying, I worked in Africa for a while, and there's a saying that when an old man dies, you lose a library. That's exactly the same when anyone leaves our industry, you lose all of their knowledge. The other thing we're trying to do is employ people within the local area. Again, people now don't want to commute. Some do. There's the work from home opportunities, but again, the pros and cons for that. There's a bit of a team dynamic piece on it as well. But the main challenges, we see, because we work a lot, obviously, with the UK infrastructure, and again, it's a global company. There's a huge rush to get towards that net zero piece. Technology is advancing quickly, but the technical experts of this, the engineers, very talented engineers that we have within our industry, there's just not enough of them. And if all of a sudden you're trying to develop new projects for wind, for solar, for tidal, to support the customers, that really is where we have, a lot of issues. And we need to work, with governments, the government agencies, the 10-point plan, the Green Jobs Task Force, to identify what we can be doing from a very low level to bring people in to our industry and then maintain them. But then there are other industries and opportunities for us to look at, such as I come from the oil and gas, that will decline. And you've got people there with transferable skills. Hydraulics is hydraulics, electrics is electrics, safety is safety, quality is quality. The products may be different, but 80% of the knowledge is already out there. And sometimes you can bring someone in from another industry, and then you give them equipment course training, and they then can learn, they take ownership, and they deliver it forwards as well. So there are other industries we should be looking at, as well as trying to, grow from a very early age what is a lot of passion for us to move towards the green industry.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. A really good perspective there. And thanks for your openness as well about some of the challenges. Apprenticeships levies, STEM ambassadors, career advancement, transferable skills, using every opportunity to bring people through into the sector. As you suggested, the growth, we all know the growth is there and is coming even more so, but to realize any of that opportunity and that potential, you're going to be competing directly with other sectors which you didn't compete with previously. You mentioned not just shortage of engineers, but data scientists. We're going to be competing with digital companies for that talent, straight out of schools, colleges, etc. So this is a really competitive market, and the industry is going to have to be geared up to fight well to win effectively in order to deliver on some of those targets. So thank you for that. So Rick, now if I come to you, the IET has done a lot of work in this space as well, such as its skills survey. How would you describe the prospects for the UK in terms of this delivery against net zero?
Really interesting question. Perhaps I should just introduce myself and the organization first. My name is Rick Hartwig. I am the built environment lead for the IET. I sit within the policy and insight team of the IET. IET stands for the Institution of Engineering Technology. I will stop repeating that because it's far too long to say over and over. But as the IET, we're a global institution. We have over 150,000 members globally. 120,000 of those are within the UK. And it is very much multidisciplinary. Sure, our legacy is really electrical engineering, communications engineering, but I have colleagues who are looking at energy, transport, design, manufacturing, healthcare, digital, engineering, safety, skills and innovation. And it's the skills and innovation colleague that was behind the publication of this report late last year, Skills for Net Zero and a Green Recovery. It's a very long report. If you look at the original data set, we only published an 8-page summary of that. And one of the highlights that rather intrigues me is 1 in 10 companies say they have all the skills they need. And yet when I hear Jim's comment about heat pumps, was it 1.2 million days labor to do 600,000 a year? I did a little exercise yesterday and spoke to a colleague and said, how many people are involved in installing a heat pump? And I came up with about 7 or 8 people during the life of that process, from the retrofit coordinator to the guy who's going to do the design and the heat calculation, to the on-site charge hand and a couple of people helping him, etc., etc. Really significant people need that we have. The survey looked at various aspects. We looked at the business views and climate change, strategies to achieve sustainability, how to reach that in sustainability in the future, perhaps the business context that we're all working in now, current workforce needs and recruitment difficulties, and then actually also made some recommendations. Just some of the interesting facts from a business perspective, because your question was about how's the UK going to deliver. Well, we actually need business to deliver, and they're the ones that are facing challenges. Everybody says we need skills, and to me, that always talks about we need the man who was perhaps the gas engineer to become the heat pump engineer or whatever the titles are. We need to reskill, something that was highlighted earlier by John too, and that is a real challenge. And it's interesting that 60% of the SMEs people we spoke to, largely SMEs spoke to, said they need help with training. They're under pressure to reduce costs. 49% of them are saying it's a major factor for them. There's competition they've got to deal with. There's a lack of growth in the mindset around this, and perhaps 26% were saying the business is not really driving the agenda, and we need to see more step up from business. 47% of engineering employers, now that's who we were largely talking to because our background, are having difficulties with the skills available through recruitment. A lot of it's coming internally, but in 5 years' time, they will be really having difficulty with external recruitment is their projection. Once again, we need to get the reskilling agenda up and moving as quickly as we can. The other interesting thing that's changing this is flexible working. I think that perhaps creates some opportunities and can create some cost savings for people. But that's another cultural revolution that is going on through everything that we're doing in the sector at the moment. 40% are saying the greatest challenge is with education, knowledge and information. Now, one interesting fact is that employers were complaining about the lack of team working, leadership management skills, those soft skills that we need in the space as well, are lacking with new trainees. So they've got to go through the whole process of doing that. So, which is why I think T-levels are such a good idea. The acceleration, the apprenticeship program is such a good idea. Making sure the academic, the degree courses have a lot more practical input to them will help change the revolution, because we've got to produce people who can't just read a book and get a remark, but actually can go and produce something from day one and be practical with delivery. And I think that's a real challenge for the industry. I think the interesting thing is we had made several recommendations to government. Sorry, let me step back a bit. Our recommendations were I'm just trying to find my notes here now. I have now lost them. Here we go. From an education perspective, we were wanting to collaborate, as I've highlighted, to improve work readiness of new recruits. Obviously, understanding net zero challenge is one of the things. We wanted to provide some certainty, recommend we provide some certainty by long-term planning. Everything seems such short-term. When you consider that in 2011, the original 2050 goal was set, it took 8 years before the government seriously did anything about that, and then they turned it into law, and suddenly everybody's now running around, and they've come along with other interim goals, and we're running around even more. We did lose time, but we do really need to try and create some certainty. You know, the 600,000 heat pump idea is a great one, but it actually can cause confusion, and it's a right across the country issue. It's about homeowners, it's about building owners, it's about engineers, installers, as we were talking about at length here. But actually, where's the manufacturer in this? I haven't heard a manufacturer say, if I could produce another 20,000 a year, I will drop my price by X. You know, there's an opportunity here for everybody. We really need more entrepreneurial skills in the space. We need to build a more flexible and agile workforce, and we need to communicate the importance of engineering skills that address climate change. I think there's a message there that really needs to get out. That's right across the sector, from the STEM side that John was talking about, right through to university and to the workplace. I think I'll just leave it at that for now.
Excellent, thank you very much. And yeah, a good look, and obviously a big mention for some interesting numbers there, and around education and training, and I think also perhaps perhaps the word that doesn't get mentioned as much in there perhaps is culture as well, because of course these people are being brought into companies, organizations, industries, in some cases with cultures that are not attractive or do not encourage them to stay. So maybe taking a little bit of that thinking as well, before we go to questions from the audience, which we'll do in the latter part, do type them in the bottom there in the ask a question box. If I just pursue a couple of challenges and conflicts with the panel first. So, Gisela, if we're talking about recognizing the growing demand for certain skills, if I could ask you about the pathways into the market to attract more people into the industry, and maybe you could say a little bit about that cultural piece, the diversity challenge, and in terms of being attractive to a wider pool of talent, for sure, please.
Definitely.
Pathways.
Yeah, on pathways, and I think we've documented a bit of this in the white paper, but we need to do a lot more work to pin down those appropriate pathways. We've heard a few of them from John and Rick there. The STEM subjects, I think it's really vital that we promote that. Looking at manufacturer training and the training that educational bodies are providing for example, we talk about the heat pump industry a lot. And apprenticeships. I think apprenticeships are up there as number one, and they're really, really valuable in ensuring that the people coming into the industry are trained throughout the business. So I think we heard just there that it's not just about those technical skills, but having the management skills and the HR skills and those things that will be so vital, especially when you're looking at industries that are scaling up at this level that we're talking about. I feel quite passionately about the diversity point, and you asked there about, these pathways, and when we look at these pathways are going to be really critical in ensuring we have a diverse workforce, and that diverse workforce is also vital, ensuring you have the right team working environment, and it can be super beneficial to businesses in ensuring that diversity. And just taking this webinar series, I think it's very clear there's been a lack of female speakers in the webinar series. I'm very conscious of that. I've been doing a lot of work within BEAMA and the industry, looking at how women in engineering can grow. I've worked at BEAMA for 12 years. I think change has started happening. We are seeing more women coming into the industry at engineering level, management level, and in other parts of the sector. But there's a great deal of work still to be done. And there are many layers to just looking at the male-female balance within the industry. There are many layers to why that might be happening. I think within the education sector, we should do a bit more work to show how the engineering industry can be an appealing place to work, maybe remove some of those stigmas or that cultural assumptions that are maybe sit with certain industries for many years. And look, I've just had a son, and I think one of the big issues with also having a good gender balance in the industry has always been when you're at the age of having a family, that can sometimes or has held people back. And the law changed in the UK in 2015 to allow for shared parental leave. And I took up that opportunity with my partner when I had my son, and it was fantastic. And I was really surprised to hear that only 2% of people take up that opportunity, and that there are also many organisations that aren't fully aware of the options for parents to share their parental leave. But it's of great benefit to me for mine and my partner's experience of becoming parents, but it's of great benefit to an employer as well. I was able to go back to work earlier than I probably would have, and I had the support of my partner because he was then doing and following another 6 months of parental leave, looking after my son before he started nursery. And I think employers and companies have a role to make to kind of advertise the options more fully to their employees, and that's really, really important. And we've done a lot of work in BEAMA to update our parental leave policies, and I want to actually do a lot more with our members to explain and educate the industry on what options are out there and how we can better support families within the industry. And I think a lot of our members are doing really great things, flexible working, promoting parental leave support, to make sure that we're not losing people from the industry because they need flexibility to raise a young family.
Excellent. Some really good points there. And it's a double awareness whammy, if you like. In some cases, the companies and the organizations you suggest are not aware that they can offer some of these options. And even if they are offering them, in some cases, the personnel are not aware they're available. So there needs to be an awful lot more awareness and communication about the art of the possible here, and flexibility and agility. And there are many replicable scenarios. They can be borrowed, stolen, repeated from lots of other organizations and companies. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. The options are out there, and the packages and even the legal frameworks, etc., for some of these things, they can simply be imported into other organisations and even across sectors. So now, if I'm taking a look now in terms of whether we've got enough, maybe I could throw this one your way first, John, in that I did have a question really. You touched on quite a bit of this, is what we have now and planned in terms of apprenticeships and training and more, is it anywhere near enough? And if I could add a little rider to that, is it enough? And are you having conversations internally about what more you can do? Or are you really now looking to external support from the likes of government in order to be able to do more? So is it enough? And if it's not, where is the help to come from, internally, or do you need to look externally now?
Yeah, I think because university is not for everyone, so that's why apprenticeships are quite key. And also, so we're looking at the moment about the technical apprenticeship. So we've got people in production, in quality, we're moving into technical and moving them around. So we're doing a lot of internal stuff, but we are using the apprenticeship levy. As I was honest about before, we were paying into this for a couple of years and we were not managing it well. And again, it comes back to, do enough people know that there's a levy that the company's paying into? Are they accessing it? Because if you don't access it for about 2 years, I think it is, the money you've paid in is just gone. Okay. So I think the government can be doing more to be pushing apprenticeships and letting the young folk know that there's more to life than just going to university, a lot of debt, maybe with degrees that they're not going to get into that, into what they want to do in future. So we ourselves, we're doing the internal piece. We're doing a lot of structure. It takes time and effort. I've got to be honest, because you've got busy people who have to mentor when people are on site. Lucy, I mean, we're the third biggest user of the apprenticeship levy for apprentices within Oxfordshire, which is good, but we'd like to get up there. There's more the government can do. As I say, they've got to expand it, make it easier for our industry to be able to access the funding, to access knowledge on how we use it and what's best. And then, it's down to us as the industry to look at people and say, okay, come in as an apprenticeship, we'll put you as a quality engineer. We'll start you off as a quality inspector and start getting training on that one. And then people can develop their career through a 2-3 year apprenticeship. As I say, we've taken people on this year. We've got it already in the headcount for next year and moving forwards. But again, we have to understand that it takes other busy people's time and effort to get it right. But by doing this, we then give people a sort of passion moving forwards. Another mini thing we've been doing is trying to grant work experience to local schools so they come on site. And I mentioned earlier about people who were going to university to do a fantastic technical degree. And between them finishing school and starting uni, 4 months, we brought them on site. We took them under a recruitment agency just for a couple of months as an ad hoc. But whilst they were here, we moved them around all the departments and get them to know the Lucy business and what's interesting to them and what isn't. And then that way, when they go to university, they've got that piece there as well. So to be honest, Jim, in summary from us, we'd like to see more from the government. But we've got to help ourselves. And I understand that we might spend 2 or 3 years getting an apprentice coming through, and then all of a sudden he moves location, or he gets a better opportunity outside and goes through. But as long as we're training people now, and we understand we're going to share that within the industry, that's a fact of life, because some people do have a portfolio career, and they will change jobs every 3 or 4 years for that career advancement and going through. But let's be open. We all need to share the pain. I saw the message from Rob Whitney on here. Yes, you're absolutely right. We do have to make training a lot more broader for people, so that makes them more broader employable, because the more diverse you are and the wider knowledge you've got, the better an employer you can be, the wider your own career path can be.
Yeah, excellent. And in terms of, sharing, you call it the pain, the responsibility, ownership of the issues. I wonder if I could ask perhaps each, Gisela and Rick, in terms of roles here. I talked about whether it's the company or the government, if you like, who should be providing the help. What's the role for organizations such as BEAMA and IET? So maybe first, Gisela, I mean, how can BEAMA, apart from direct training, how can, in terms of voice and representation and role, what can you offer to this piece as well?
Yeah, and I agree with the comment. This isn't, we can't put all the weight on government to take action. It's got to be a combined effort here. I do, on the apprenticeship point, the Institute for Apprenticeships are doing a lot of work here, and I think that's quite good to see. So in response to the Green Jobs Task Force report, they are going through quite a detailed analysis of the training levels across the green jobs scope, which is huge. So they're looking at the training levels and the requirements that will be needed. And I think in terms of the role of BEAMA, one of our vital roles here is to relay that work to industry and get their input, because, you know, one of the things, for example, we're finding is there's a lot of analysis being done on the obvious sectors, heat pumps being one, wind, solar. There are other sectors that aren't being so carefully scrutinised, and I think we're going to be at risk, therefore, of not providing support for some of the industries that are going to be so vital for net zero. And I think one of the examples there is the manufacturing of electricity network infrastructure. That's hugely important for net zero delivery, but in a lot of the Green Jobs Task Force report and the follow-on work and rhetoric we've seen in the net zero strategy, for example, that's not referred to as much, and there's a clear kind of maybe lack of more detailed understanding. And BEAMA are doing some work at the moment with the Energy Systems Catapult, which we will publish on the 10th of November to try and set that out a bit more clearly. But yeah, we've got to find out where the skills requirements are going to be, and with government then determine where the apprenticeship support needs to be, because that's going to be vital, and the Institute for Apprenticeships is going to be really key, and work with training organisations. But fundamentally, in a lot of, if you look at the building environment, so heat pump installers, for example, there is a role for government in helping facilitate and incentivize installers to think, okay, I want to be trained to install a heat pump. Whereas at the moment, the market for boiler replacement is a far more profitable and attractive option for a gas engineer than installing a heat pump, where you may get more callbacks and things like that. So we've got to break that cycle, and we've got to create an attractive industry that's commercially viable for them, because the training is there. You're just not seeing the people coming through in the numbers we need, and that's because they need to see it as an attractive business proposition.
Good point. Yeah, we discussed in some of the sessions earlier in the week the idea of seeing training as an advantage and a benefit, not a day lost in some cases, you know, and there needs to be that, you know, paying it forward mentality, but it is a cost issue. We have to be realistic. If I could now come round to you, Rick, with some of the same question. I should point out, actually, the link has gone in for the skills survey from IET in the chat for anybody who's wanting to follow up on some of what Rick said earlier as well. So if I were giving you the same question, but with a bit of a spin, Rick, and it is political up to a point, but I'm trying not to get into party politics, but industry versus government. I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about their respective roles, and where does the IET fit into that in terms of us getting these kind of priorities right? Industry versus, the danger is government sits on its hands allegedly and just waits for the industry to do it, saves them actually legislating. Vice versa, the industry's waiting for things to be mandated or for funding to come through. Time's not on our side. We can't, neither can wait for the other. So could you divide up for me, tough questions, the respective roles, industry, government, what are we needing each to do, and what's the place for the IET in amongst that?
Industry and government, kind of a bit like love and marriage. What was that song? Go together like a horse and carriage or something like that. They both need each other, and I think that's the reality. Industry lives with the problem on the ground. They're at the coalface, so to speak. Our survey, one of the things that highlighted was employers having difficulty with the skills available through the recruitment process. You know, there are a lot of skills out there, but to find the right person that you need. So a lot of them are starting to move to internal training and develop their own staff. I spoke to a member of the IET, and he pointed out to me, it was about 4 or 5 months ago, that there's a group of about 35,000 skilled technicians. I say skilled, but who don't have recognition for their skills. So they've done some electrical training, but they don't get anything that goes with them. That training is as much as they can do that job and work for the company. Now, that's not good for longevity of retention of staff, because if they move from company A to company B may not recognize their skills, their training that they've developed in company A, and they go back to basics again. So we are starting to look very carefully at what we're doing around the Eng Tech space, the apprenticeship space, how we can support that through skills recognition, trying to give these individuals a home for life, rather like the engineers do. It's good for industry, it's good for the individuals, and it's good for the country as well. It's what government wants to see. Now, government has a role to set the playing field, the parameters, some of the overarching rules. And I think in the current situation we find ourselves in, that's pretty much an impossible task. As I said, 2050 is bearing down on us. We've wasted kind of 10 years, and all of a sudden panic set in, and that's not a good thing to do. So I'm a bit concerned, and I think some of my colleagues are, that government is kind of running around doing all sorts of little things. But actually, if industry was to get behind those little things, to import and use some of the cultural drives and changes that they're trying to achieve, not just wait for government to do it. It's about the love and marriage. It's a relationship. We need to work together to move this thing forward. I think that is a real opportunity for government to try and bring business alongside with them. Clearly, we need to be talking to each other more, and that's the role the IET can play, and we're looking to play. And we are trying to work even more on an unsiloed basis. As I said, I look after built environment. I have a colleague who does transport, but actually buildings only exist because there's transport to get people to them, and etc., and vice versa. So I really think we do need to break down those silos and start to work cross-institutionally. There's no reason why we shouldn't be collaborating more with BEAMA, IET BEAMA. Now, BEAMA is about company membership, we're about individual membership, but actually there's an opportunity there. In the past, we would have said we can't talk because we're two different markets, but actually all my members make up your members. And if it wasn't for your members, I wouldn't have members. So I think there's an opportunity really across sector, across other institutions as well, to really start to collaborate. And if we start to do more at institutional level, it starts to get conversations going. We just, digressing slightly, but we just recently published a plain language guide for product data aimed at manufacturers. And what has astounded me is the conversations that have come out of that from different organizations wanting to talk to us about product data. Yet we aimed this at the manufacturer. But these are organizations that are supporting the manufacturer. There's a recognition for cross-sectoral collaboration. So my role is strongly focused on trying to do that within the IIT, but also within industry. I'm here to collaborate with anyone who wants to try and talk to us. And if we can match our strategic goals and achieve something for the benefit of the nation, then job done.
Excellent. And we'd obviously fully endorse that collaborative ethos. And I saw you nodding, Isella, but also putting your hand up. I wonder if you wanted to add a little to that in terms of, it's everybody work with everybody else. We really do need.
I really support that point that's just been made on cross collaboration within the industry. And one of the roles that I think we have to play in terms of IET, BEAMA and other trade bodies is creating that culture of sharing best practice on where our problems lie in terms of skills gaps and things, training. But also, I mentioned about our review of kind of parental policy in the industry and parental support as a good example of sharing best practice. When I started, reaching out to our membership, looking at examples of how they're progressing their support there and their company policies, it was really enlightening to see what some organizations are doing, and others then had lots of questions. And so creating that culture of sharing best practice is really important. I think one point I forgot about government role, which is going to be so critical on the skills front, is quality enforcement, especially when we're looking at, and this is something we talk about at length in the publications we've produced as BEAMA. We've got we've had a lot of change, and we are going to see a lot of change in terms of building safety requirements and the regulations around that for very good reasons. And we're about to embark on, or hopefully embark on, one of the most major retrofit programs of all UK homes. We have to ensure that work is done safely. And I think when we're retraining, we've also got to be having a conversation about enforcement and certification and things like that. And government have a really important role there. I think enforcement is a huge issue.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And were you wanting to add something there, Rick? Or?
Yeah, I just think I totally agree with what Gisela said. I think what government really needs to help is to give a long-term plan, because so often some of the things they announce are 2 or 3 years. What happens after that? We need to try and have a longer-term vision, that the decision I make today is actually going to have an impact in 2030, 2040, and 2050.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, but I did. I was a bit flip yesterday in the webinar where we were talking about looking ahead, and somebody said about government departments talking one to another. I said, that's really fanciful. That's never going to happen. But equally, I'm afraid I might put what you just suggested in the same box there. I'm afraid.
Absolutely.
Government and long-term plans, that's another less likely to happen scenario. But actually, that brings me kind of nicely to maybe some of the last things I wanted to ask about, which is asking you to look ahead. I've done this in 1 or 2 webinars where it's a future gazing thing, and I'd like you to do it with your rose tinted spectacles on a bit. Let's assume some of the opportunities we've been talking about can be realized. Some of these systems and programs and developments have come on stream, are put in place. There is that kind of groundswell. There is this mainstreaming of skills that are needed. So let's assume things are going well. So fast forward 5 or 10 years. We've had 5 or 10 years of really productive growth. I'm going to ask each of the panel now to close really. What might the jobs market of the future therefore look like for our sector? So I'm going to start with you, John. So you're looking ahead 5 or 10 years. Things have gone well for you as a company. Things are going well for the sector and the jobs market in general. Paint us a little picture. What might we be looking at in 5 or 10 years' time then in terms of, that jobs market and that workforce?
Yeah, so I think if all's gone well, we'll be working with a lot more complex equipment to put through to make things easier to manage, a lot of data sort of analysis, information that can be gathered to make things easier for people. So if you're on like a major network, you're onshore, you're offshore, you understand how things are working. I think if we've got enough engineers and technical people coming through the system by them and they love it, and there's a lot of developments that makes it a lot better. But we have to remember, as well as those technical experts up at the front end and the data gatherers, the scientists in the IT, there's still always going to be a need for those. I'm in the manufacturing industry who can actually assemble these things, understand what they're assembling, doing a bit better. The quality, making sure that everything is right. We get things out to customers, we get things from our suppliers that work well. The skill set of the people to do customer services, the project managers of it all. I think it will all come together, and it is quite funny going to the point about the government not speaking to each other. We in a lot of our own individual companies, we still work in parochial in the stovepipes, and I think just getting those barriers through internally will help things to grow through as well. So I think there'll be a real focus now on a technical piece about bringing people into the industry and maintaining them with good data, everything looking forwards. And then I also think there's got to be what we call a back office type element to make sure that we can do business with each other easier than that as well. So I think we're in the right industry. It's a growth industry. You probably couldn't be in a better industry right now. But there are challenges. You still need people to be out in the van on a construction site, to be fixing things, and you need the support behind them as well. So I think a lot of opportunity. We may be having the same sort of conversation in 5 to 10 years, and we just need more of what we're growing right now.
Excellent. Nice point to start with. So if I come to you now, Rick, and same scenario, the crystal ball's on the desk in front of you there. You're looking in it. It's all positive. It's all been forward gears, no backwards. So where can you see, I mean, by all means, be a bit futuristic if you like. Where can you see us getting to 5 or 10 years if we've done well on these things?
Well, I would love to see a whole new raft of entrepreneurs have come to the fore in the space. That's what's needed, is some entrepreneurship to drive the change from business. Now, they don't have to be, the Teslas of this world. It could just be a really good local regional business run by a strong entrepreneur, because that will help drive the change. That will make the organization more agile. That will help deliver what we really, really need to deliver. I mean, there's absolutely no option. We have to deliver this. And that's one skill that's difficult to teach. You can encourage it and you can coach it, but we need those entrepreneurs to come forward. The other thing is, I'm going to be a little bit naughty here. We published 10 days ago a paper called Energy Technologies for Net Zero. I'm going to put a link in here, which lists of all the tech that we can use in this space to reach 2050. I just hope that that's thrown away and we don't need to refer to that anymore.
Excellent. So a couple of nice points there, and the idea that, maybe the electrical industry could be the home of entrepreneurship in terms of climate and energy and clean tech going forward. So Gisela, same question to you. How do you see it going in 5 or 10 years? Imagine BEAMA's been at the heart of things. It's been a very busy period, terrific growth, terrific development. You're looking at an exciting market and a workforce. Describe for me what you're seeing then, looking around you in 5 or 10 years' time, please.
Well, I think the thing that comes to mind most is if we have that provision of that workforce in the right areas, we will be better placed to be on track to meet net zero. I think the message we're hearing is this is absolutely critical for the UK's ability to meet that target. And if you have those skills in place, and in 5 years' time the industry is looking that way, we will be having, and we would have had, more investment in those clean tech industries that we need in the UK, and we might even see some reshoring of industry to the UK, and therefore we will be less reliant on some global supply for whether it's materials or skills that could be quite limiting in our ability to deploy some of these technologies at scale. And I think supply of materials and things is very front and center in our minds at the moment, but I think this is all interlinked, and this is about ensuring we have a robust industry that can deliver products at scale and get the investment to do that as quickly as possible. Otherwise we won't meet net zero. So I think the overall message from our work, the IET's work, and from our members is this is actually a really exciting time to be working in this industry, and we've got a communications role to get that across and make some of the less obvious jobs in the market more visible to people when they're coming through educational routes. So yeah, it's an exciting opportunity for a lot of people now.
Excellent. Very nice point to finish on. Good mention, of course, of supply chain issues in terms of all this growth. We need to understand that context and potentially the whole UK PLC scenario too, which is interlinked. But a strong note of optimism, or confidence, shall we say. Let's try and use a more businessy word, confidence, rather than just blind optimism. We are enthusiastic. It is exciting. There are dynamic opportunities. There are entrepreneurial mechanisms available, and all of this potentially can happen if we work together hard along some of the lines we've described, with the appropriate support and leadership, ideally, from government. So on those notes, thank you very much to all our panelists, John, Rick and Gisela, plus of course our series partners at BEAMA. Also to yourselves out there in the virtual audience on Crowdcast for comments and participation today. A reminder to check out elementalexpo.com, the online community for professionals focused on innovation in heat, water, air and energy, vital elements within the built environment now and in the future. As I said at the top of the show, you'll find a full diary of events on the website, host of upcoming webinars. Plus now you can also view the full back catalogue, every one of the Super 7 webinars in the Zero Carbon Home series with BEAMA. That series is supported by Glendimplex, Drayton Controls, Valent UK, Lucy Electric, Hankins, Schneider Electric and AD. And this session too will be available within minutes of us closing the windows here. You can review it, you can share the link with colleagues, family, friends, suppliers, customers, anybody you think would benefit from listening to some of the insights shared. So thank you once again to my panel. That's it for today. I've been Jim McClelland, editor at Susmean. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you very much.